Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today I have another STAMPtember video to share with you featuring, yes, Tim Holtz's stamp set and stencils, part of the STAMPtember release or collaboration at Simon Says Stamp. This is an exclusive limited edition stamp and stencil combo. I highly recommend picking it up if you want it. Pick it up right away. So I am going to stamp everything on a 1-layer background. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of watercolor cardstock. I am using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp the images, starting with the sleigh. Now this card has zero masking except for the stencil, and I will show you that here in a minute. But I'm not fussy cutting or masking any of the other images, and it works so well. So once we have Santa, I am going to clean my stamp and we are going to stamp the trees. I found it worked really well to go ahead and use my MISTI for this, so that if I need to stamp anything more than once, I'm able to do that easily. Now, while I stamped the trees once, I felt like that just did not fill in that bottom area the way I wanted it to. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving that a little bit and stamping additional trees to fill in our forest down below Santa and his sleigh even more. You can see that I'm going to easily be able to overlap them and stamp them. It didn't really fit that direction, so I'm gonna maneuver that in my MISTI until I get it just the right way. These, of course, are all red rubber cling stamps. You can take your foam insert out of your MISTI and be able to stamp everything perfectly. Now I'm gonna switch it to the other side and fill in a few more trees. By filling in the trees, I instantly loved the bottom of this panel so much more. And then we'll just clean our stamp. And then it is time for the moon. I want to create a night sky with my card. You get both the masking stencil, which is the solid piece, which I'm going to use first. I did put a little adhesive on the back. I simply folded a piece of Post-it tape in half and held it in place. This is going to create a fantastic mask so that when I go and add color to the moon with the other stencil, we're going to get that great detail. Now, while I have my stencil in place, I am taking Prize Ribbon Distress ink, and we are simply adding blue to the sky. I did not mask anything. I'm just using a small mini ink blending brush and going around my image. I was worried this wasn't going to work, but it ended up working so fantastic. I love when I can find shortcuts like this and not have to mask anything and end up with a beautiful card design. Don't forget to take your ink kind of down in between the trees. Don't worry about getting a little blue on the trees. That's totally fine. And when we take our water and our green ink pads and create some watercolors and paint those trees, we are going to be able to get rid of any of that blue. Okay, there is our night sky. Prize ribbon is perfect for a wintry night sky, I think. Now that we have that in place, I'm going to go ahead and go around the moon a little bit with black soot distress oxide ink. This is going to simply deepen and darken the sky just a little bit. I almost always add a little black soot to my night skies. I just really love how the black plays with other colors, whether you're doing a spooky autumn sky or a winter sky or whatever it might be that you're doing. I really just like that little addition of black soot with the prize ribbon or whatever color you might be using. Chipped sapphire is one of my favorites as well. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going back with a little bit of blue now just to kind of soften any harsh edges I may have had with the black soot. And we can remove our mask, and there is our perfect moon. I love, love, love this stencil set. Now we're going to take a little bit of yellow paint, and I'm using scattered straw. I pressed it onto my glass mat. I'm picking up a little bit of the color with a paintbrush, and I'm just adding a little water to my moon first, and then I'm going to pick up the paint, or I'm calling it paint, but our ink, and we're watercoloring our moon. So I haven't used the stencil part yet. We'll come back to that here in a little bit. I want to get a nice base color of light yellow down, just like that. And I'm kind of going up right next to the blue line, but trying not to touch the bluish black ink around the perimeter of my moon. If I touch a little bit, that's okay. I don't mind a little bit of the water kind of, you know, making the colors play, but I don't want to do too much. Then I'm going to grab 3 colors of green ink. We have Rustic Wilderness, Peeled Paint, and Pine Needles. I wanted lots of colors of green around the perimeter, or around that bottom border rather, of my card. And I'm gonna just kind of very quickly, I add a little water, I pick up the color with my paintbrush, and then we're painting our trees. Very quick and easy watercolor. I say that if I can do it, you can do it too. Watercolor is not my strongest skill at all. I know I've talked to you guys about this a lot. It's something that I want to work on and have been trying to work on here and there a little bit. I have watercolored with distress inks before, and it is, for me, a great way to watercolor because I already have the distress inks. I know what the colors are, and because they are water reactive, they are fantastic for learning kind of how to watercolor and adding color to your cards like this. So the first color I added was Pine Needles, and now I'm doing Rustic Wilderness. You can really see the difference between the colors as well, which I love. Very, very pretty. And I'm just kind of trying to scatter the 3 different colors, so that no 2 trees are right next to each other of the same color. Now we're going to pick up Peeled Paint, and you're going to see yet another color of green. Look how pretty these are. Now I'm laying down a base color. You can go back over and shade with another color over top of whatever base color you choose, and that's going to add a whole nother layer of depth and dimension. But I want to get that base layer down and let that dry first. I'm just kind of turning my cardstock to keep my hand out of it. You'll notice anywhere that the blue overlapped the trees, I am having fantastic luck covering that up with my green ink. Just kind of fades right into the design. I'm leaving a little bit of white down at the bottom. I will take care of that in a bit. Now I'm adding that shading, like adding a different one of these colors on top. If you run out of a little ink, you can always just press that down and make a little bit more. Felt like I needed a little bit more Pine Needles. I love how the Pine Needles looks over top of Peeled Paint. And beautiful. I just love, love, love these images, and I know you guys are going to as well. We're also going to watercolor Santa's sleigh. So I'm going to clean up my palette. I'm going to get out some new colors. This time we're going to use a little candied apple and also ground espresso and gathered twigs. Oh, and I forgot, I think a little aged mahogany. So candied apple and aged mahogany, ground espresso, and gathered twigs. For Santa's sleigh, we're going to lay down a nice layer of candied apple first, and then the reindeer are going to have a nice layer of gathered twigs. Now this image is rather dark. So there's a lot of shading and things already. That's totally fine. You're still going to end up with a beautiful image. So make sure and pull that color around the side. So even though it looks super dark, like the side of the sleigh and Santa's arm and everything that's extended, it still needs a little bit of color because that's going to really help just kind of make the image come to life. And I'm mixing my aged mahogany and candied apple together now at this point. I did get a little too much blue, like on the brim of his hat and the pom-pom. So what I did was take a little bit of clean water, take my paintbrush, and try to kind of wipe away that color on those images. Same with the cuff around his wrist. A little bit more red for the toy bag in Santa's sleigh. And then a little ground espresso around the darker parts of the sleigh ties into the reds beautifully. And then we're going to color in our reindeer. So I'm just taking those browns and adding a nice base color. Look at the image come to life, you guys. Isn't this beautiful? This was so much fun to create. So much fun. Need a little bit more ground espresso, so I'm just going to press a little bit more there. I'm using minimal water for these smaller areas on this image so I can control the color a little bit more. The more water you have on your paintbrush, the more loose the coloring might be and how it might spread out and go kind of where you don't want it to. So I definitely recommend using a little less water for these smaller areas. And I just have a little bowl over off to the side where I'm cleaning my brush. I did zoom in so that hopefully you could see the paint coloring process a little bit closer up. Now I think it's super harsh white down there at the bottom, so I will take care of that in a bit. And I also thought the antlers, they need filled in. I didn't want to leave them open. So I am using ground espresso for that. But I hardly have any water on my brush. I'm basically just kind of picking up the paint and tracing that. And then I'm going to grab a little black soot and fix some darker areas. So that's going to be kind of our shading area over top. Kind of around some of those places. I need a little bit more aged mahogany. Again, very, very minimal water for this small like reins and harnesses around the reindeer. I'm even mixing candied apple and aged mahogany together. And then we're going to take that color around the runners, around the bottom of the sleigh, little black soot as well. Really want that to show up nicely. You can even pull in a little bit into the body of the sleigh, and I added a little more aged mahogany there as well. I'm going to clean my brush. We're going to clean up our paint palette. I kept cleaning. I tried to keep it super clean as I was working. And then we're going to grab a little pumice stone. So I grabbed a pumice stone and I'm going to position the moon mask so that most of it is not going to wipe over. I want to try to avoid the reindeer's antlers if possible. Now the one thing about the pumice stone, as much as I thought I was going to love it, I thought I had totally ruined my card. I'm not going to lie. I was like, that's not exactly what I wanted. It's a little too harsh, but never fear. Distress inks are so easy to work with, and you can generally fix anything that you don't totally love. So I didn't get upset. Instead, I grabbed my yellow blending brush and I am simply going to go over pumice stone with scattered straw, which remember is the color we used to begin with. And honestly, that kind of softened it a little bit, and I ended up really, really loving it. I think by the time that we distress the background, add a little stamping and embossing, and add our sentiment, it's all going to be good. Now, I noticed a couple things I missed. So now that most of the sleigh is dry, I grabbed a little more aged mahogany, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that. Need a little more black soot. You can always go and add a little bit more as needed. I really wanted to make sure that the Santa's sleigh took center stage here. All right, next up, I need a little blue. So I'm taking a little bit of prize ribbon and super watering it down and just kind of touching it along the base underneath the trees to give the illusion of snow. And then I fixed a couple of areas where I maybe missed adding my blending brush. Now that that's done, I have my background in a splatter box, and I'm going to splatter the entire sky with white so that it looks like falling snow. I'm going to be super generous here. I have 2 paintbrushes, and I'm adding a really good sprinkling. I want it to cover the whole thing. You'll also notice, I don't think I caught it on camera, but the moon looks a little bit more yellow. That's because after I stenciled with pumice stone and then scattered straw, I removed the stencil and I actually took my blending brush and just went over the entire moon section with my blending brush to kind of deepen and darken that center part of the design. Once my falling snow is all over the background, I let this completely air dry. And I will tell you, this did air dry for maybe at least overnight, but I feel like I didn't come back to it for maybe 24 hours. You don't have to let it sit that long. I would suggest overnight. I just wanted to make sure that no embossing powder would stick to anything, because we're going to go back to our stamp set and grab the sparkly, I call them the sparklies, and we're going to stamp a little bit down here below the sleigh, and then we're going to have it kind of come up around the top as well. We're going to be using a couple of colors of embossing powder here. The first for the sparklies is Antique Gold from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm stamping that, and then we're going to heat emboss, and it just adds to the magical, distressing, fun feel of this card. I just really love absolutely everything about this. This is the magical, Christmassy feeling, I think, that we remember from childhood. So it's a little sparkle down below. You could definitely have done this step prior to the white splatter too. I guess I wasn't thinking in that order, so, you know, that's fine. Next, I added the stamped sentiment, and we're heat embossing with white embossing powder. I, of course, picked Merry Christmas to all and to all a good night because I thought that fit my card perfectly, and I love how the sentiment just ties into the design. So while I really love this, I felt like we needed a little bit more sparkle. So I'm going to kind of play around with placement, and I think it's going to kind of wrap around this top left corner perfectly. So let's go ahead and stamp that one more time. And again, heat emboss with Antique Gold embossing powder. So you guys know that I love to tell on myself basically and tell you all the mistakes that I make because some of them are really kind of quite funny. This was not funny. This I'm going to be probably cleaning up from now until the end of time. So if you watch Tim's lives, Tim talks about glitter is an outdoor activity. I can tell you that, and I'm going to tell Tim that. Probably by the time this airs, I will have told him already. I'm adopting that philosophy. Glittering is an outdoor activity only. I am going to glitter my background, and you guys, I accidentally bumped the paper. I was folding it to funnel the glitter back into the container, and the paper popped out of my hands, and it was like a shower of glitter in my studio. I wanted to cry. It was so bad, and I had projects all over my desk. I have glitter. I've cleaned probably 3 times since then, just trying to get all of the glitter, and I still keep finding sparkles, so I will vacuum and Swiffer and all of the things constantly. But I do love the glitter touches on my card. So that's kind of what my whole little story is telling you to, and glittering from now on for me is an outdoor activity. So I'm adding glitter to Santa's pom-pom, the collar of his coat, brim of his hat, the cuff around his wrist, and then I even thought we would add a little glitter to some of the trees. This is Prisma glitter. It's super iridescent-y and sparkly and really, really small and fine. And really, I can tell you right now why what happened. I'm using a thick piece of cardstock because it was sitting on my desk and it wasn't folded in half. That's what happened, because thicker cardstock will pop open easier. I usually use copy paper and I didn't, so my mistake. But literally, I have Prisma glitter everywhere. Don't be me. So the final thing that I did is I took glossy accents and I am adding it to Santa's sleigh. And I can keep telling you the rest of this story. When the glitter splattered, glitter went on the sleigh and it was completely going to ruin my card. So I real fast took a palette knife and scraped off the glossy accents. So you guys, this card was a labor of love, but it still ended up being one of my very favorites from STAMPtember. I absolutely love it. The glossy accents on the sleigh, in my opinion, makes the card. I love, love, love it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Definitely pick up Tim's stamp set if you want it, the stamp stencil set. And thank you so much for joining me. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Simon Says STAMPtember that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.